G'day guys, Matt here from Not in the Manual. Today I'm going to do a video on autopilot. So this is really just going to be, I haven't done an autopilot video for a while, and it's going to be an autopilot test. This is my daily route and I know this route really well. Now, autopilot is a bit of a controversial thing. I think it's fantastic, but only if used under certain conditions. So this commute here is mostly a 70 km/h zone. It has clear lane markings, but there are traffic lights, there are lane mergers, there are a few things that complicate it for autopilot. But it handles the majority of it really well. And as long as you are paying attention, it's quite safe to use and can actually make a commute like this a lot easier. But I don't do it every day. It's not a perfect system. Some days it works really well, and other days, it doesn't work so well. So today we're just going to see how it goes, and I'm going to try and cover some basics as well. And this will also set a baseline for me getting the new Model Y. So I've just engaged autopilot here, so that's a double tap on the gear stalk. And now I need to set the speed to 70, so we hold that gear stalk down for a couple of seconds and then you can see the speed set to 70 now. So you can see there, it's just phantom braked a little bit. That car actually came out a little bit and the car slowed down just as a precaution. That's quite normal. It's not really called a phantom brake if it has something to brake for. So I'm holding my hand on the wheel down here at this point, and I just sort of let my hand hang down here, and it's quite comfortable. And the car is doing quite well. The reason I wanted to redo this video right now is in 2 days' time I'm picking up my new Model Y. This is setting a baseline. Now, I filmed this video last week and I'm filming it again now because I've had a software update since then, and I want this car to be on the same version of software as the Model Y that I'm picking up, so that I can do a comparative autopilot test with the Model Y on this same stretch of road. So this is a bit here where the car sometimes doesn't handle it too well. You can see these cars are stopped here on the right. No, it handled that okay. So what I'm looking for today is some improvements with the latest software update, but then also some improvements from when I did a similar autopilot test here for you almost a year ago now. And I don't think it's dramatically improved. I think it's a little bit smoother in certain circumstances. So you can see that car coming into my lane in front of me there. They indicated they got across. The car handled that quite smoothly. And that's where I've noticed that there is a bit of an improvement. There are still the same old things that it just never gets right. But, it's, as long as you know where that's going to happen and you're prepared for it, then you can either just turn autopilot off or just manually take over the steering wheel if something doesn't work out. So I still think it's something not to be scared of using, but just something to be very cautious in roads like this. Now, setting the speed, you saw I held the gear stalk down for a couple of seconds and that set the speed. That will set the speed to whatever displayed speed is on here. Now that's to do with the car's traffic sign recognition. Now I'm going to show you down here, there are some tricky situations. This sign here just said truck and bus speed limit ahead is 40. I'm in a car, it's changed that to 40. It's just flicked it back to 70 because it saw that sign there. But you'll see on that sign, there was a 40 and a 70 sign. So it's 40 for trucks and 70 for cars. So that confuses the car a little bit. So before you hold that gear stalk down to set your current speed to the speed zone, just have a quick look and see what speed the car is recognized before you do that. Because if I tried to do that when it was set to 40, the car is going to decelerate quite quickly down to 40. And that's going to give you a bit of a scare. Sometimes it will also read the speed signs off the back of buses. And our buses here have 40 zone signs on the back of them. And you need to slow down to 40 as you pass buses when they have lights flashing on them. So they have these big 40 zone signs. So here's another one of the 40/70. So you can see the car actually displays both speed signs. and then it randomly picks one. So it's picked 70 today, but that could pick 40 sometimes. And then when we get down here, there's a similar sign. So you've got to be super cautious about that. So you can either hold the gear stalk down to set the speed to what the current speed zone is that the car has recognized, or you can touch your finger on that speed symbol. And when we get down here further, there's going to be a school zone. And I'll show you there, you can set it how you do it for school zones. The car is a bit slow in recognizing school zones sometimes because I think it's doing it from the map data more than the camera data. So we'll see what happens there. So yeah, I wanted to do this test so that it's on the same software version. Now, also what happened a few months ago, we got an update that we now have the full self-driving stack built in with our standard updates. Now, I don't know if the car is utilizing that and then just cutting back some features, or if we've got the same old autopilot. But once we started getting those software stacks, I really noticed an improvement just in the smoothness of the car. Not, you know, the situations where it did the wrong thing are still there, but they don't happen as often. And I use this every day. This is my same commute I do every day, and I have noticed an improvement here. And I think it's good to just have that baseline set and really get to know your commute. So if you're on these sort of roads in an area that you don't know, I'd be a bit cautious about using autopilot. Autopilot is at its best in a motorway situation or a freeway situation, highway situation, where there is no traffic lights like this. There are clear lane markings, there are multiple lanes, you've got good visibility ahead. That is when autopilot is at its best. Now, it's still not perfect, but I did a recent road trip, and if you consider that I did probably 150 automatic lane changes, and I had 2 of those were aborted and it came back into this lane safely. Yes, it can scare you the first time it does it, but safely, I think that's pretty good odds, and that's close to perfect. And I still think, I'm still an advocate for autopilot and say it's a great feature, but you do just need to lower your expectations a bit. It's not full self-driving. It's not going to do everything for you. It may feel like that at times, but that's not the case. So you can see here, I've just got my hand resting on the steering wheel. I haven't had to intervene at all, but this is the perfect scenario. This is stop-start traffic, so sometimes what can happen here, it can be a bit harsh in taking off and it can be a bit harsh in braking. This is also something you need to be prepared for when you're using autopilot. It does leave quite a large gap between the car in front of you when you stop. And that's purely as a safety precaution, that if it senses that there's going to be a rear collision with your car, it's got room to evade that accident. But I really think after the car has stopped and the traffic has stopped, the car should inch up and close that gap. And maybe at some point it's going to do that, because it really just annoys some drivers, especially if they're stuck in an intersection behind you and they're wanting you to move forward to give them some room to get out of the intersection. So that's where it can be quite annoying. So you can have, back onto the speed zone settings, you can have that set to 2 different things. If you go back to my old original Autopilot 101 type video, you'll see that in the settings you can have it so that when you engage autopilot, it can be engaged at your current speed or the recognized speed zone that you're in. So you can see there it's still holding 70 kilometers an hour for this zone. If I engage autopilot and I've got it set to engage at the speed zone, then it will automatically set that to 70. And the car, if I engage it at 50, the car is going to accelerate up to 70. And that can be handy in certain situations, but that's not always the case. If you're not paying attention and you re-engage autopilot, but it has seen a 40 zone or a 60 zone sign, or it's confused, it's going to either slow you, it's going to try and slow you down really fast to that speed, and that's going to not be a good thing if you're on a freeway situation and the car has read the exit sign speed from an exit ramp off the freeway, which it often does. You'll be driving along and you look down and it's an 80 kilometer an hour recognized zone, but you're in a 110 kilometer an hour zone. So that could be quite dangerous if you have it set to that. So I always have it set so that autopilot engages at the car's current speed. Then I have a quick glance down here and have a look at the recognized speed zone, and then I will set autopilot. That's the safest way to do it. So I'm doing this test today, but it has been super smooth now. One of the times when it did some braking before, it was a little bit harsh, but every other time it's needed to brake has been pretty smooth. So this has been quite a good run this morning. And what I'm not going to know, I have now had a couple of days of using this, and I do know that it is this software, latest software update is a little bit smoother. So they're very small, incremental. You can see there the car sort of swerved a little bit with those guidelines coming in from the other direction. And that's a real weak point of autopilot. But you can see if there's a lot of other cars around, it does a little wobble of the steering wheel. It's all good, it's just a little wobble of the steering wheel, but it quickly works out where it needs to be. And then once you're past those guidelines, it's pretty smooth. So coming up here, this is quite a big long gap in this intersection, and it handles it perfectly. But autopilot does work much better when there are cars around you for it to follow and to use as a bit of a border for its driving lane. So you can see here there's a bus, and it's read the 40 speed sign. I know you guys can't read this screen, but it's changed that to 40. And that's where I'd have to be careful if I was trying to re-engage autopilot for whatever reason. Now it's going to try and do that 40 speed. The other feature I will mention, one of the basic parts of autopilot, is setting the follow distance. So that's with the right scroll wheel. You can scroll left or right, or click left and right, and change that distance. So in traffic like this, I will just keep it on 3. I find that 2 starts to give you some harsh braking because it's just not keeping enough of a distance behind the cars. And in this stop-start traffic, you want to just make sure it's got a bit more time to brake. It's not going to have an accident, but it is going to brake quite harsh if it's sitting too close to the cars in front. The other thing you can do with the scroll wheel is change the set speed for autopilot. So if you scroll down with that wheel and do a fast scroll, it's going to scroll down in 5 kilometer an hour increments. If I just scroll slowly, it's going down in 1 kilometer an hour increments. So that's down to 60 there. Now I'm coming into a school zone. It hasn't recognized it yet. But once it recognizes it, I can then press on there and set the speed zone down to 40, or hold my gear stalk and that will drop it down to 40 as well. Or I can just use the scroll wheel here and scroll down in 5 kilometer an hour increments and take it down to that speed. But I'll put it back up to 70 for now, and you'll see once it recognizes this school zone, we're after 8 AM in the morning, so it should recognize the school zone. So it has done that now, but I'm well inside that school zone. So I can just press that 40 up the top, and it's now set the speed zone to 40. So there's some things I guess that just confuse people that are new to autopilot. But it's not something you need to be afraid of, but you do need to practice it on roads that you know very well. So we're coming up to the end of the speed zone here, and I'll show you what to do once we get to that point. What I often do, because it takes some time to react, you can see we're passing out of the school zone now. Oh, recognised pretty fast today. You can then press the 70 there, or hold the gear stalk down again to do that, or just use your scroll wheel to slowly ramp that up. And sometimes it's good to just slowly ramp that up before you get to the end of the speed zone, so that there's not as much of a delay and you're not annoying the cars behind you when you then need to resume to the 70 kilometer an hour zone. So I'll often do that, or I'll just put my foot on the accelerator, take the car up to 70, and then hold the gear stalk down again, and that's the fastest way. But I prefer to let the car do it if possible. So we've just had some recent rain and there's a lot of potholes. So the video may be a bit shaky in sections. So looking in front, there's a grey Model Y. This time next week, that's what I'll be driving, or in a couple of days' time, that's what I'll be driving. Looking forward to that. And what I'm hoping, it's probably unrealistic, but I was hoping with the Model Y, with the cameras actually being a lot taller in the car, just to get some smoother autopilot operation. Now we're coming up here to a really bad spot here. The car doesn't know what lane. It's still not doing that right. I had to take over. So I've disengaged auto steer manually, and that was quite easy to do, but I knew that that was coming up. So I can re-engage autopilot with a double tap of the gear stalk. There's auto steer back on again. Model Y invasion. I don't mind the red actually, but yeah, my favorite car color is the gray silver color. So I'll be glad to be getting back into that. Oops, I should have set the speed zone again, but lucky the cars in front are doing 40 kilometers an hour, so we're all good. Back to 70 again. Yeah, this is really smooth with the braking today. But I have noticed, as I said before, with this particular software update, that has been quite noticeable. It's much smoother for me. So you guys, make sure you comment and give me some feedback as what your experience is with update 2023.26.7. Just let me know your thoughts and your experience. So this is a 2021 Model 3 with the LFP battery. It's the SR Plus rear wheel drive. Just so you've got some comparison there if you're new to my channel. So these are the sort of videos I like doing, is just these raw sort of tests here, just reviewing the features. And what I'm trying to do here is just set a benchmark, a baseline, just so that we've got something to compare to in the future, and give you some tips along the way. So you can see here this stop-start traffic, it's handling it quite well. When you're doing the little shorter sort of shuffling in the traffic, it's not as good there. It can get quite harsh, and sometimes it just can't get out of that, and it just stays harsh. So we've got a 60 zone there. I'll hold the gear stalk down, set the car to 60. So I've got a bit of a trouble point coming up here. You can see it tries to go into that lane I need to take over. And then I re-engage here once I'm past all of that mess of lines on the road. Really looking forward to Tesla improving that, but if there had been a car either side of me, it would have been okay. It may have just wiggled the steering wheel a little bit, but it would have been fine. Now the car is telling me to take an exit and go around that way to work. I really wanted to show you the motorway. I'm going to risk it, just see what the traffic's like down there. So it doesn't matter if I'm a little bit late to work. But anyway, we're going straight here. I've got a couple of different ways I can go to work. This way takes me down to a motorway. This way is just more of this sort of road here. I can exit and actually start heading off in that direction. But we'll come down here. Even if this is some stop-start traffic, that's fine. That'll be a good demo. So with Autopilot engaged, it does all the braking and accelerating for you. So we're coming down a hill here. We're about to go down a hill, and there's going to be some standstill traffic. So it's getting a little bit harsh with the braking here. The other thing you need to be careful with Autopilot is when you've got hills and you've got the crest of a hill, and when the Autopilot can't visually see further, it will actually slow down there. And once again, that's not phantom braking. That's braking for the car being cautious because it has limited visibility in front of the car. So it's going to brake if it has limited visibility. It's going to err on the side of caution and slow down, which is good. So yeah, it's sort of starting to get into this motion now of harsh acceleration and harsh braking. And it's difficult for the car to get out of that. Sometimes what you're better off doing is disengaging Autopilot, driving along for a little bit, and then re-engaging it, and that can sometimes just break that cycle. The car just seems to get into a bit of a glitch sometimes with that, and it stays quite harsh. So we're coming back into a 70 kilometer an hour zone now. So we were in a 60 kilometer an hour zone. Actually, we've already gone into it. So the car's still set to 60. It's not going to automatically do that. Now, the one thing I want to point out, which I forgot to earlier, with the set speed, if you are on a multi-lane road like this, with auto steer engaged, it will let you exceed the speed limit. So it will let you go, you can basically set, I could set this to 100 kilometers an hour and it would do it along this road. If this road was a single lane either way, there are some restrictions to the speed that you can use autopilot at. So I'll show you going onto the freeway entrance ramp down here further. You'll see it's a single lane, it's an 80 kilometer an hour zone, and it won't let me set the speed higher than 80. So single lane roads, it won't let you engage auto steer at a higher speed than the set speed zone. And that's purely just to do with the amount of lanes either way. So that's a bit of a safety thing, I guess. See, with this nice sort of separated road, the oncoming cars are separated at a greater distance, and I guess you can just have less restrictions on that. I mean, it's still not good to exceed the speed limit, but in a highway situation, sometimes you may just need to go a little bit quicker to overtake in certain situations. But I suggest you really just use the accelerator pedal instead of putting your set speed to a higher speed. But anyway, that will explain why the car does some funny things with the set speed. Okay, I just had some camera issues there. I just had to cut a small section out. So this section of road here, it's renowned for sort of built up traffic like this. And once we get past these traffic lights down here further, it will open up again into an 80 kilometer an hour zone and we'll be all good. What I may end up doing is just time lapsing some of this and then slowing it down if there's something important to show you. So wow, this is just really smooth today. So as I said before, I don't think it's a random thing. It has just been naturally a bit better here. So you can see there I've got a car either side of me and it handled that intersection quite well. Sometimes in that intersection it can think that it needs to go and turn into the other lane. The same with this intersection coming up here, but because there are cars around for it to follow, we should be pretty good. So yeah, little wobble of the steering wheel, but it was okay. I didn't have to take over. Same here, we may just end up time-lapsing this bit down to the motorway. There's nothing really exciting going to happen here, but wow, that braking was just so much smoother there. I'd be interested to hear what everyone else's thoughts are on this latest software update, 2023.26.7. I know the full self-driving stack part of this update hasn't changed. I think it's still 11.3.6 from memory. Possibly how Autopilot uses that has changed. I'm not sure. So you got a little bit wobbly then and I accidentally disengaged auto steer. I didn't need to, that was my fault. So this is the trouble sometimes I can see. I know this van's going to want to get over because that lane ends, but the car's sort of sitting in his blind spot, but it is leaving a good gap here for him to get in. This is another weak point of Autopilot, is mergers. That was good there. He was smart with how he merged, but if he tried to cut me off, then the car would brake quite suddenly. Okay, coming up to a weird section here, it's why I've stayed in this slow lane. So this slow lane splits into two. And what the car usually does is picks this middle lane here. And then we'll get past this slow car here. And then we'll do an auto lane change over into that lane. Auto lane change seems to have been consistent too, but that can just be random. You just need to be careful where you use auto lane change. Make sure the lane markings are very clear. So here we are coming into a merge again. Yeah, car handled that quite well. Didn't brake harsh. It's got cars going all over the place in front. Okay, and this is where I need to take over. Okay, stuck behind a truck for this bit, which I was hoping wouldn't happen. Okay, coming up to standstill traffic here, so I'm not going to be able to demonstrate the motorway side of it to you today. There's obviously an accident coming up here. But I know it handles the motorway side of things quite well. One thing I should be able to show you here, if I engage autopilot now, set to 90, there's a merge lane ending here, and often the car indicates to go into that lane and wants to go into the merging lane, even though we know it's ending up ahead. And that's quite a weak point with autopilot, and it's still something I see the full self-driving guys complain about in the US. See, it started indicating for that merge lane. So I've had to manually turn that off. I don't know why it keeps trying to get into lanes that are obviously ending a bit further up. Just something that it does. So guys, that was all I really wanted to do this morning. I know this bit here, I don't know how long I'm going to be stuck in this bumper to bumper traffic. I do have navigate on autopilot, but I have it defaulting to off these days because I just find it's a bit dangerous entering and exiting freeways, and I would rather just have it turned off. The speed-based lane changes I'm not too happy with, so I often don't use that part of the navigate on autopilot package, or the enhanced autopilot package, sorry. But you can just turn it on and off. You can see I've got it turned back on here again now, or turn it off there. Anyway, so guys, look, yeah, this video, this will be the last video I make in this car, and hopefully if this is the last take that I have to do. But yeah, anyway, this will most likely be the last video I do in this car. This car has been amazing, and yeah, I really appreciate you guys watching my videos. This is another long one, but I've got some good points in here. If you haven't used autopilot yet and you're new to Tesla, hopefully this video just gave you a little bit more confidence, and I showed you that I've used it in these tricky situations and how easy it is to just take over if you need to. So guys, I appreciate you watching again, and I will catch you next video.